The galactic concord of civilized species had existed for 10,000 years, and in all that time, no one had ever managed to make an entire diplomatic summit stop breathing at once. Then humanity arrived. Humans were the newest addition to the grand interstellar community, a species of caffeine-dependent bipeds from an inconsequential blue planet, still smelling faintly of ocean and ozone. The Concord regarded them as a curious experiment. Clever, loud, a little reckless, but mostly harmless. They had brought humor to the otherwise solemn councils of the galaxy, the way a spark brings color to a cold hearth. Their food was toxic, their music incomprehensible, and their fashion sense an act of interstellar rebellion. And yet, there was something endearing about their optimism. Ambassador Lila Hart embodied that optimism perfectly. She was slight, soft-spoken, and carried a smile like a well-polished blade, gleaming, harmless at first glance, but capable of drawing blood if you looked too long. Her assignment to the annual Summit of Harmony, aboard the Imperial flagship Vigilant Dawn, was meant to be symbolic, a gesture that humanity was finally ready to sit at the adults' table. Across the hall stood General Zarthune, commander of the Imperial legions, scourge of the Outer Arms, and a creature who had personally overseen the subjugation of 15 worlds. He towered twice Lila's height, his chitin armor lacquered to a dark, oily sheen, his multifaceted eyes reflecting contempt. To him, humans were a joke that had gone on too long. The hall glittered with the light of twin suns. Representatives of 72 species filled the amphitheater, reptilian senators, crystalline diplomats, gelatinous philosophers, each floating, twitching, or humming in their respective translation bubbles. 1,000 cameras recorded every gesture for the galactic record. General Zarthune's voice, amplified through translator fields, resonated like grinding stone. Order is maintained through dominance. Peace, through fear. The weak obey, the strong command. Such is the natural law of the cosmos. Lila, seated 2 rows down, tilted her head and raised a hand politely. "Excuse me, General, but your fleet statistics are incorrect." The translation matrix stuttered. The entire assembly froze. No one, absolutely no one, interrupted an Imperial warlord mid-speech. Zarthune turned, antennae quivering. "Repeat that, primate." She smiled gently. "You claimed the 12th Armada sustained only 5% losses at the Battle of Serene's Edge. That's not accurate. According to Concord archives, your fleet lost 38% of its carriers before retreating." A low murmur rippled across the chamber. The Vrelian scribes exchanged nervous clicks. Even the gelatinous philosophers wobbled in alarm. The general's mandibles flared. "You dare challenge me, human?" "Not challenge," Lila said evenly, adjusting her datapad. "Clarify. Transparency is the foundation of harmony, isn't it?" The pause that followed was thick enough to choke on. Then, with a snarl that would have frozen lesser species, Zarthune stepped forward, wings flaring, and struck. His armored leg swung with the force of a plasma cannon, connecting squarely with Lila's face. The sound cracked across the hall like thunder. Her body flew backward, sliding several meters before stopping at the base of the dais. Gasps and chittering filled the air. The guards didn't move. No one did. The translator drones hovered uselessly, unsure how to interpret the sound of horror. For a long, terrible moment, Lila lay still. Then she moved. Slowly, deliberately, she pushed herself up on one elbow, her hair a mess of copper and blood. The cameras zoomed in. Her smile remained. "Noted, General," she said softly, voice perfectly calm. "I'll be sure to relay your feedback to my superiors." And then she stood, smoothed her jacket, and walked out of the chamber. The silence that followed was complete. Even the ambient hum of translation fields seemed to die. Somewhere in the upper balconies, a being made entirely of vapor whispered, "Oh stars, they're going to do something." Back on Earth, the incident broadcast reached every major network within an hour. The footage replayed endlessly. The kick, the fall, the smile. Commentators dissected it like vultures on a carcass. Memes appeared within minutes. Kickstarter for Galactic War trended for a full day. At the United Terran Assembly, the atmosphere was deceptively casual. Leaders of the planetary unions sat around a polished basalt table, steaming mugs of coffee and tea in front of them. The president leaned back, scrolling through the footage on a tablet. "So," he said finally, "he kicked our ambassador in the face." "Yes, sir," said General Monroe, head of Terran Defense, "in front of 72 delegations. No apology issued." The president sipped his coffee. "That seems unwise." A diplomat from the European sector chuckled nervously. "Perhaps we should issue a formal complaint?" "Certainly," Monroe replied. "Right after we move the Pacific Fleet into orbit." A ripple of laughter ran through the room. But it wasn't the laughter of amusement, it was something sharper, colder. Humanity didn't get angry the way other species did. They simmered. They plotted. They smiled while sharpening knives. The president set down his cup, steam curling around his fingers. "We'll respond. Politely." Within hours, encrypted orders moved through the deep channels of the Terran command net. Shipyards on Luna began cycling up. Mars Fleet Command issued routine patrol notices to sectors dangerously close to Imperial space. Civilian broadcasts announced a week of quiet reflection and peacebuilding exercises. When the Empire's intelligence division intercepted these transmissions, they laughed. The humans were clearly posturing. They always talked big and acted small. Meanwhile, aboard a medical ship orbiting Earth, Lila Hart lay in a recovery pod. Her face bore faint bruises, her expression serene. A nurse adjusted her vitals. Lila's hand twitched, touching the comlink on her wrist. "Ambassador Hart," came a voice through the earpiece, deep and controlled. "The Assembly has authorized Operation Polite Knock. You're reinstated with full diplomatic authority." Lila's lips curved faintly. "Acknowledged. When do we start?" "Immediately. Try not to scare them too quickly." Her laughter was soft but carried an edge of iron. "No promises." Across the galaxy, General Zarthian gave an interview to Imperial media. "The humans are a childish race," he declared. "They think words have power. But power is measured in fleets, not phrases." He was still speaking when the broadcast station's lights flickered. Somewhere in orbit, sensors picked up strange energy signatures, small, precise, and human. Back on Earth, the president watched the interview replay, his reflection faint in the window beyond which stars glittered like patient eyes. "Children," he murmured, "are excellent at teaching lessons." He turned to his generals. "Inform our ambassadors to withdraw from Concord space. Quietly. Let them think we're retreating." "And then, sir?" "Then," he said, smiling with the same calm precision as Lila Hart, "we knock." Outside, the blue planet turned beneath a thin veil of clouds, oceans glinting like steel under sunlight. From orbit, humanity's shipyards flared to life, tiny sparks against the dark, gathering into constellations of purpose. The world watched, waited, and remembered the image of one woman standing up after being struck down. For the first time in a millennium, the galaxy had no idea what humanity would do next. And that, more than any weapon, was terrifying. Exactly one word echoed across encrypted channels, whispered between soldiers, engineers, and diplomats alike. "Begin." And somewhere deep in the cold between stars, the universe held its breath. The official statement from the Galactic Empire arrived 3 days later, wrapped in the smug politeness of a conqueror humoring a child. It expressed mild regret for any misunderstanding that may have arisen from Ambassador Hart's unfortunate physical contact with the general's limb. The phrasing alone was enough to make several human linguists choke on their coffee. The Concord praised the Empire's graceful diplomacy, unaware that Earth's response had already begun. Across the Sol system, humanity moved like a single organism waking from an evolutionary nap. The orbiting dockyards of Mars, long dormant since the peace accords, roared back to life. Cargo freighters were repainted midnight gray, registry codes quietly rewritten. Civilian captains received sealed orders marked only with a small, polite phrase. "We apologize for the inconvenience." Engineers who once built mining drones began crafting something heavier, quieter, infinitely more deliberate. Ambassador Lila Hart watched it all from the viewport of the hospital ship sanctity. Her face healed but her eyes harder. The bruise had faded, yet she kept touching her cheek as if the memory itself itched. Below her, Earth turned serenely, unaware of how quickly it had stopped being a planet and become an idea, a banner that demanded respect. She turned as Admiral Monroe entered, a slab of calm authority wrapped in crisp uniform lines. "You look alive," he said, handing her a cup of coffee. "Medical reports say you shouldn't be out of bed." "I've never been good at following instructions," she replied, sipping. "Any updates?" "Operation Polite Knock is in motion. Fleets are dispersing under civilian registry. Logistics are ahead of schedule." He hesitated. "You're certain about this?" Lila met his gaze. "I was kicked in the face during a peace summit, Admiral. That's not a diplomatic insult. That's an open declaration. And if we let it slide, we'll spend the next century wiping boot prints off our flag." He smiled thinly. "Fair point. The President has authorized your special envoy status. Full discretion. You'll have command of Task Force 8. "That's a lot of trust," she said, setting the cup down. "Not trust," he corrected. "Understanding. You know how they think. You smile like them. But you don't forget." She nodded once. "Then let's begin." While humans prepared, the Galactic Empire celebrated. Imperial networks aired dramatized reenactments of the summit, portraying Zarthune as a noble warrior humiliated by an insolent primate. Merchants sold souvenirs of the kick that ended a conversation. Senators cheered, declaring the human race chastened. In the imperial throne chamber, Zarthune knelt before the emperor, his carapace gleaming like obsidian. "The humans bark," the emperor said, voice low and resonant. "But they have no teeth. You will see to it that they remember their place." Zarthune bowed. "By your command, Majesty. Their fleets are laughably small. Their technology primitive." "Then make an example of them. Send a patrol to their border. Nothing major, just enough to remind them of who rules the stars." "It will be done," Zarthune said, already imagining the headlines. "Empire reaffirms galactic stability." He did not notice the quiet scholar seated among the Emperor's advisors, MTA of the Vrelian Enclave, a being whose translucent skin pulsed with anxious light. "If I may, sire," MTA began cautiously. "Humans are, statistically unpredictable. Their aggression patterns lack rational boundaries." The Emperor waved a jeweled hand. "They are a fledgling species. Fear keeps them docile. You worry too much." MTA inclined his head, but the glow of his eyes dimmed in worry. Somewhere deep in his neural folds, ancient instincts whispered that the mammals who smiled too often were never to be underestimated. The Empire's patrol fleet, 36 cruisers, crossed into human-monitored space 6 days later. They found nothing, no defenses, no challenge, just a scatter of automated beacons broadcasting cheerful greetings and weather reports. Their commander, a young reptilian officer named Trask, laughed into the comms. "Perhaps they've already fled." Then the stars changed. Sensors screamed as the beacons blinked off and the void unfolded into motion. From the shadow of a gas giant, human ships emerged, sleek, silent, matte-black vessels with names that made no sense to alien translators. The HTV customer service representative, the USS Nope, the polite request. The fleet didn't transmit hails or demands. They simply moved, deliberate and symmetrical, surrounding the patrol formation like sharks around tourists. Trask opened a channel. "Unidentified vessels, this is Imperial territory." Lila Hart's face appeared on screen, calm and perfectly composed. "Commander Trask. I'm Ambassador Hart, representing the United Terran Assembly. I'd like to discuss reparations for an incident involving one of your superiors." He blinked. "Reparations? You mean, surrender terms?" She tilted her head slightly. "No. I mean yours." The feed cut. In orbit above the gas giant, the human fleet shifted formation, a graceful arc of precision. Trask ordered weapons online, but his sensors went dark. In less than 3 minutes, every Imperial ship in the system was dead. Engines offline, communication arrays fried, weapons cold. Not a single shot fired. When the news reached the Empire, panic mixed with disbelief. The Concorde demanded explanations. The Empire called it a regrettable systems malfunction. Lila's recorded message, broadcast over the neutral channels, said otherwise. Diplomacy works best when both sides can speak freely. We've adjusted the volume. In the Terran assembly, the president watched the galactic reaction unfold with the detached calm of a chess player who had already seen the endgame. Reporters clamored for statements, opposition parties demanded restraint, and the military quietly loaded ammunition. "Do you think they'll retaliate?" asked Monroe. "Oh, certainly," the president replied. "Arrogance always retaliates. But first, they'll underestimate. That's our window." Lila's name trended across human networks. Children mimicked her line in playgrounds. "I mean yours." Artists painted her face over starfields. Soldiers wore her smile on their armor. Somewhere between fear and pride, humanity began to believe in its own myth. Meanwhile, in Imperial command halls, Zarthune fumed. "They disabled 30 ships without a single casualty? Impossible." His aide stammered. "The recordings show electromagnetic interference and subspace distortion, sir. Our computers couldn't process the frequency." "Primitive trickery." The general roared. "They've insulted the Empire. Ready the Armada. We'll erase their homeworld from the star maps." The scholar tried once more to speak. "General, their methods, non-lethal yet absolute, suggest restraint, not desperation. They're sending a message." Zarthune turned on him. "Yes. The message that they are prey pretending to be predators. Prepare the fleet." In orbit above Earth, the Sanctity joined a growing armada, its medical bays converted to strategy centers. Lila stood before a projection of the galaxy, red lines marking Imperial expansion. Monroe's voice echoed over the comm. "They're mobilizing their main force. Thousands of ships, headed your way." She smiled faintly. "Good. Then they're coming exactly where we want them." He hesitated. "This wasn't part of the original plan." "It is now," she said. "They need to see us as reckless, predictable, easy to provoke. It's the only way they'll walk into the next step." Her reflection in the viewport stared back, composed, determined, the faintest scar under her left eye. "A reminder and a promise," she whispered. "Let's teach them what polite means." Across the void, the Empire's war engines ignited, filling the stars with crimson trails. But already, humanity's silent fleets were moving, into shadows, into ambush points, into the calm before the storm. The galaxy watched, breath held, as two civilizations prepared to test the limits of pride. And somewhere between stars, in the hush before battle, Lila Hart's voice carried through encrypted space. "Knock, knock." The signal pulsed once, then vanished, leaving the cosmos waiting for the door to open. The Imperial Armada assembled like a storm given form. 10,000 ships arrayed in perfect symmetry, their hulls gleaming with reflected starlight. It was said that when an Imperial fleet moved, the galaxy itself flinched. General Zarthune stood on the command bridge of his flagship, the Vigilant Dawn, watching the datastream scroll across holographic displays. His mandibles clicked in anticipation. This was no mere battle. This was retribution. The insult of humanity's defiance would be erased from existence, and his legacy would be eternal. "Admiral Trask's fleet has not responded since the incident," an aide reported, trembling slightly. Zarthune's eyes glittered like shards of black glass. "Then they've already served their purpose. Their failure will mark the beginning of our triumph." From the imperial capital to the farthest colonies, propaganda filled the airwaves. Posters showed heroic soldiers crushing the emblem of Earth beneath their boots. The message was clear. The humans would kneel or vanish. Even the Emperor himself appeared before the council, proclaiming the campaign a holy reclamation of order. Every alien civilization in the Concorde watched in silence. Some pitied the humans. Others bet on how long Earth would last once the Imperial Armada arrived. The journey to Sol took 2 weeks through the hyperlanes, each day filled with arrogance and routine drills. Crews joked about collecting human skulls as trophies. Officers dined on fine nectar, toasting the victory that was surely theirs. They spoke of the humans as pests, a contagion to be sanitized. When the fleet dropped out of warp at the edge of the Sol system, the laughter stopped. The system was empty. No defensive grid, no fleet, no transmissions. Only the quiet shimmer of planets orbiting their star. The humans had fled, or so it seemed. Zarthune leaned forward, suspicious but unwilling to let caution delay glory. Advance to Earth. I want it broadcast to the galaxy when the first bombardment begins. As the fleet approached the orbit of Jupiter, comms flickered. Static hissed across every channel, rising in pitch until it formed a rhythm, steady, deliberate. Then, from the darkness, sound replaced silence. A voice, human, male, confident, spoke through every receiver. Testing, testing, is this thing on? The bridge crew froze. The voice continued, now accompanied by a faint electric guitar. This message is brought to you by the United Terran Assembly. We appreciate your visit to Sol System. Please remain seated and enjoy the music. A blast of old Earth rock erupted from the speakers, an ancient song called Highway to Hell. Across the fleet, confusion turned to outrage. Officers screamed for the signal to be jammed, but the music was embedded in every wavelength. Then the visuals began. Every screen displayed looping images, dancing cats, laughing humans, absurd text that no translation matrix could properly render. And beneath it all, one calm message repeated. We are processing your destruction. Please hold. Enough! Zarthune roared, slamming a clawed hand on the console. Find their source and annihilate it. Sensors scanned the void, but there was nothing. No ships, no stations, just a debris field drifting beyond Jupiter's orbit. A communications officer stammered. General, I believe the debris is moving. The rocks began to unfold. Metallic plates rotated, thrusters ignited, and what had appeared to be an asteroid belt revealed itself as an intricate web of hidden stations, cannons, and mines. The trap snapped shut. Human ships decloaked in disciplined silence, sleek and black against the sun's glow. They moved without formation lights, without communication, like predators who had rehearsed the kill 1,000 times. Open fire! Zarthune bellowed. Beams of plasma lanced into the dark, but the humans didn't dodge, they redirected. Their ships reflected the Empire's own energy back at them, turning their volleys into self-inflicted wounds. The vigilant Dawn shuddered as half its escorts disintegrated under the sudden feedback. A cold, steady voice came through the comms, unmistakable even through the static. General Zarthune. Ambassador Hart speaking. Do you have a moment to discuss your surrender? He froze. You mock me, human. Oh, not at all, she replied, her tone crisp and almost cheerful. We just thought it polite to check in before dismantling your fleet. Consider this, customer feedback. Her words struck harder than any weapon. Across the command deck, alien officers stared at their sensors in disbelief. Dozens of Imperial ships went dark, their power cores shut down remotely. The humans hadn't destroyed them. They had turned them off like toys. How are they doing this? An aide whimpered. Lila's voice returned, gentler now. You shouldn't have touched me, General. Humanity doesn't start fights, you see. We end misunderstandings. The screens flashed white. One by one, the Empire's ships lost propulsion, drifting helplessly. Human vessels surrounded them, silent and merciless. Then, every monitor in the fleet lit up with a single video. Footage of Zarthune's kick from the summit, replayed in endless loop. The translation field provided subtitles, respect in progress. Underneath it, a new caption appeared. Kick a diplomat, lose an empire. The broadcast spread across the galactic network faster than any fleet could travel. Within hours, the meme flooded every planet, every channel. The mighty empire became the galaxy's punchline. Even its allies began to reconsider their loyalties. Soldiers refused to fight under a banner that symbolized humiliation. In orbit above Jupiter, the surviving Imperial officers begged for orders. Zarthune stood rigid, staring at the silent void where his fleet had been. His pride, his weapon, had turned to rust in his hands. General, came Lila's voice again, now almost kind. We're giving you a choice. Withdraw, and we'll escort you out safely. Stay, and we'll make sure your surrender is remembered in song." He snarled. "You think this is victory? You think we fear you?" "No," she said softly. "I think you're realizing what everyone else has known since the beginning." "What's that, human?" "That we've been studying you longer. Then you've been laughing at us." The line went dead. A heartbeat later, the Imperial communication array overloaded, frying its systems completely. In the following silence, the humans withdrew, leaving the crippled fleet adrift. No demands. No trophies. Just absence, a gesture far more terrifying than destruction. Word of the defeat shattered the Empire's illusion of invincibility. On a dozen worlds, rebellions sparked overnight. The Emperor raged, but fear had already spread like wildfire. To the common citizen, humans were no longer primitive mammals. They were phantoms who smiled as they dismantled empires. On board the Sanctity, Lila Hart stood before a projection of the scattered Imperial remains. Admiral Monroe appeared beside her, arms folded. "They're suing for peace," he said quietly. She didn't look away from the screen. "We're not ready to accept." "Then what do we tell them?" "Tell them," she said, her voice a calm whisper, "that we're not angry, just disappointed." Monroe chuckled under his breath. "You realize you just terrified half the galaxy with that line." "Good," she murmured. "Maybe they'll finally learn manners." Outside, the wreckage of the greatest armada in history drifted through the void, cold and silent, a monument to a single act of arrogance. And far away, beyond the reach of sensors, new signals pulsed from human outposts, converging toward Imperial territory like a closing hand. The war was not over. It had merely paused for breath. The once mighty Imperial palace no longer glittered. Smoke rose from its scorched spires, and the banners of conquest that had hung for millennia now drooped in silence. The corridors echoed with the sounds of hurried footsteps and whispered fear. Within the throne chamber, General Zarthune stood restrained by gravitic bindings, his armor stripped, his wings folded tight. Across from him, seated with infuriating calm, was Ambassador Lila Hart. She wore a simple dark suit, no medals, no insignia, only that same unshakable composure that had unnerved him the day he struck her. The silence between them was thick, alive with the ghosts of battles lost. "You've destroyed an empire," he rasped finally, voice hoarse from interrogation. "All because I touched you." Lila leaned back, crossing one leg over the other. "Touched is a generous word, General. But no, that's not why this happened. You destroyed your empire because you believed fear was the same thing as respect." His mandibles flexed, the motion a grotesque imitation of laughter. "And what do humans respect? Chaos? Vengeance? Balance," she said softly. "And memory." She gestured toward the wide hollow window overlooking the city below. "Look at them. Your people aren't enslaved, General. We didn't glass your worlds or poison your oceans. We gave them a choice. They chose not to follow you." Outside, the capital stretched in eerie stillness. Imperial banners had been replaced by the emblem of the newly declared Concord of Free Systems. The war had ended faster than anyone had predicted, not through annihilation, but through collapse. Every vassal world, every colony, every subordinate species had seen the footage, heard the calm human voice that dismantled fear with civility. The Empire hadn't been conquered, it had been shamed into surrender. Zarthune stared at the distant skyline, trembling with a hatred he could no longer sustain. "You think you've won? The galaxy will never follow you." "Oh, they already are," Lila replied. She rose and approached the table between them. On it sat a single cup of tea, still steaming. She placed it before him. "Try it." He recoiled slightly. "Poison." "Hospitality," she corrected. "We call it that when we give something before being asked." He stared at the cup, uncertain, then hissed quietly. "You planned this? From the beginning?" "Of course we did. Humanity doesn't walk into wars blind. The moment you kicked me, you gave us the moral high ground and the justification we needed to move every fleet into position without resistance. You thought you were humiliating a diplomat, but you were authorizing a trap." Her voice was calm, but beneath the serenity lay something vast, a will older and sharper than strategy. "Operation Hospitality," she continued, "was designed to expose the weakness of empires built on intimidation. You gave us exactly what we needed, an enemy too arrogant to imagine a polite smile could hide a war plan." Zarthun's gaze flickered, disbelief fighting with reluctant comprehension. "You wanted this war?" Lila shook her head. "We wanted deterrence. We wanted to make sure the next species that thinks about testing humanity remembers this lesson. The point wasn't victory, it was inevitability." The words landed like blows. For the first time, Zarthun saw her not as prey, not even as adversary, but as something entirely alien. "You're monsters," he whispered. She smiled faintly. "You're not the first to say that." Above them, holographic displays flickered to life, showing feeds from across the galaxy. Humans walking side by side with alien citizens, rebuilding trade routes, reopening schools, repairing what had been broken. The transition was astonishingly swift. No occupation, no forced conversions, just efficiency and order. The Concord of Free Systems had already voted unanimously to appoint humanity as its central mediator, a role they accepted with modest smiles and the terrifying weight of competence. "The galaxy doesn't fear you," Zarthun said bitterly. "It pities you." Lila tilted her head, studying him. "No, General. They respect us. The difference is subtle but important." She tapped a control, and a hologram shimmered above the table. A detailed network of former Imperial worlds, each marked with a blue insignia. These worlds were never ours to take. They were yours to lose. All we did was give them an option better than obedience. Zarthun sagged in his restraints. "You'll learn, human. Power corrupts. It always does." She regarded him for a long moment. "Then it's a good thing we never wanted power. We only wanted the seat next to it." Outside, thunder rumbled as atmospheric engines stabilized the capital's air layers. The war was technically over, but its echoes were only beginning. Human engineers supervised reconstruction efforts, while journalists across the galaxy debated what the event meant for interstellar politics. Words like ascendancy and hegemony crept into discourse, though humans themselves avoided using them. They preferred the word stability. When Lila exited the chamber, Admiral Monroe waited in the corridor, his expression a mix of satisfaction and unease. "How's our old friend?" "Learning humility," she said, adjusting her coat. "Some of our allies are nervous," Monroe continued. "They think we'll turn into what we just dismantled." She paused, then smiled without humor. "Let them think. Fear is a faster teacher than diplomacy." They walked together down the long marble hall, past murals depicting humanity's role in the new Concord. Each image was stylized, almost mythic. Humans standing between warring factions, offering peace with one hand and a pen that looked suspiciously like a weapon in the other. "You ever feel bad about it?" Monroe asked after a while. "The manipulation, the psychological games?" She exhaled slowly. "Bad? No. Responsible? Yes. We didn't want this, but someone had to remind the galaxy that civility isn't weakness. That's the point." In orbit, fleets repositioned. Now branded as peacekeeping forces. Patrols shifted from aggressive deterrence to silent guardianship. The message was clear. Humanity didn't need to boast anymore. Their restraint had become their most powerful weapon. Weeks later, Zarthun's trial concluded. The verdict was unconventional. Rather than execution, he was appointed as a strategic consultant to Earth's military command, his insights repurposed as warnings. When the sentence was read, he looked at Lila and muttered, "You win wars with jokes and coffee." She gave him a small, knowing smile. "And spreadsheets. Never forget the spreadsheets." As he was led away, he caught sight of the new human insignia displayed across the chamber wall, a stylized open hand with a faint scar across its palm. Beneath it, the words inscribed in flawless imperial script, "Never mistake civility for weakness." Years passed. The memory of the war faded into legend. Cadets in military academies studied the day of the kick, as the moment the galaxy changed course. Some called it the funniest war in history, others called it the quiet apocalypse. Statues of Lila Hart appeared on human and alien worlds alike, her expression forever poised between a smile and a warning. On the 100th anniversary of the Concorde's founding, a young alien diplomat visited Earth. She was nervous, clutching a datapad of peace proposals. A human escort met her at the landing platform, extending a hand. "Welcome to Earth," he said warmly. The diplomat trembled slightly. I hope we can discuss trade agreements without incident." The human chuckled. "Relax. We're just here to talk." He paused, grin widening. "Unless someone kicks us again." The alien blinked, uncertain whether to laugh or run. The human just kept smiling as the transport rose into the sky. Far above, in the orbiting Concorde headquarters, Lila Hart's statue watched over them all, one boot resting gently on a broken Imperial helmet, her gaze fixed toward the stars. In the archives beneath it, a recording looped endlessly, her voice preserved in crystal clarity. "Politeness is not submission. It's the space between peace and power." And somewhere in the void beyond known space, new civilizations listened, learned, and wondered what kind of monsters smiled so kindly. The answer, of course, was humanity.